If you have topics you would like to have us discuss on the Aging Well podcast, please click on the links in the episode description to send us a text or record your message or comments. We'd love to hear from you and how we can help you age well. If you benefit from the Aging Well podcast and would like to support the content financially, please click on the Support the Show link or support our affiliates and advertisers. Welcome to the Aging Well podcast. I'm Jeff Armstrong here with Corbin Bruton. In this and the episodes that follow, we will share candid discussions on aging and hear from the experts. We are here to inform and encourage as we experience, aging. In this episode, I am joined by Dr. Gaétan Chevalier. Dr. Chevalier has a PhD in engineering physics and specializations in atomic physics and laser spectroscopy. Dr. Chevalier is currently lead faculty at the California Institute for Human Sciences, a visiting scholar in the Department of Human Medicine and Public Health in the School of Medicine at UC San Diego, and director of the Earthing Institute and research director at SciTech. The Earthing Institute envisions, quote, the day when every human being and pet on this planet will be grounded throughout their daily life. When that day comes, grounding will be considered as important for health as good nutrition, sleep, exercise, and a positive mental attitude, end quote. The Earthing Institute seeks to, quote, further the research regarding the health benefits of being connected to the earth, to serve as a repository of information about grounding the human body, and to disseminate this knowledge throughout the world, end quote. Dr. Chevalier has been involved in several studies that have yielded an intriguing picture of what happens when we connect to the earth. In the words of the Earthing Institute, quote, it's as if the switch has somehow turned on, and in response, the body's inner workings start functioning more efficiently and robustly, end quote. Join us in this episode as we discuss grounding and how it might help us to age well. So, Dr. Chevalier, welcome to the Aging Well podcast. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's begin by having you share a little bit about who you are and kind of how you got to where you're at.
Okay, my background is actually engineering physics. I used to work in nuclear fusion at UCLA, and so it was a very different life at the time. And then I had the opportunity to meet a Japanese scientist and Shinto priest from Japan, who actually was doing research on meridians and chakras and all these interesting topics. So I always been interested in yoga and Eastern philosophies and things like that. So when I saw the way he was doing his research, it seems credible, using like a Faraday cage and, amplifiers and things, everything that seems to be, could actually give interesting results. So I just wrote, because I saw this article in the magazine, just wrote to Japan. There was an address, and I got information that Dr. Motoyama was planning to do a conference in a yoga center in Santa Monica. And so I went, I met the man, and I just thought that I would do some interesting research, like a hobby or something. But he told me, have you taught electricity and magnetism, in the past? And I said, yes, actually, as a graduate student in my PhD at the University of Montreal, I had the opportunity to teach electricity and magnetism to beginning engineers, at the university. I had even have sometime classes with 75 students. So I just said yes. So he offered me, I'm starting a new institute in Encinitas, which is in San Diego, North County. Would you be willing to teach? So I started to teach. And finally, after a year of teaching, he's offered me a full-time position at his new school. And I had a decision to make. Do I go and plunge into this kind of like woo-woo research at the time, especially we're going back to 1993, was not as well accepted as today. But I felt like it's really my passion, what I would like to do. So I accepted. And so I became director of research. and director of a couple of departments because the school was small. And that's where I met Clint Ober. Suddenly, Clint Ober showed up and was doing a presentation on earthing. That was probably 2003. He had only one study that he had done with a nurse, and it was only questionnaires. So they had pain questionnaires and wellness questionnaires and all of these questionnaires that these people were filling before and after a month of, I think it was a month of grounding. And there was improvement in pain, happiness, inflammation reduced, better sleep, all of these things. I watched that and I said, wow, this is amazing. But I said, if it was true, it's so simple. You just touch the ground and you're healed that much. It would have been discovered 100 years ago. So I was kind of skeptical and I just let it go. If I was not for one of Clint Ober assistant come to me and said, we want to pay for a research project, I would probably have not gone deeper into this topic, But we're an open university. It was a new university, looking at all new stuff and things that were a little bit out of the box. So we said, sure. So we did the first research project, and it was published in 2006. It took time to get published. And we did it in 2003. The results were excellent. Muscle tensions were coming down. People relaxed better. Blood flow increased, brain wave improved, all of this stuff. But I was still skeptical a little bit. Said, yeah, well, but the patient is grounded and the equipment is grounded, so there could be ground loops. Because I had this problem when I was doing my PhD. I was working with lots of expensive lasers and equipment and stuff. And we had to be very careful about ground loops. So I was kind of like, that's okay. But we decided to repeat the experiment with equipment that was not grounded, battery powered. The data was sent through fiber optics, and we got even better results, at least as good results. And then two of my friends participated. Both of them had arthritis in the hands. One of them pretty bad, actually. He said, when we talked to him, he said, I'm at 8 right now, 0, no pain, and 10, like you want to jump off a bridge. He said, I'm at 8. And I said, it doesn't show. He said, I live this way. I take medication, it doesn't help me. So we put a patch on his hand. And so we talked about half an hour. And we asked him, I say we because Clint was there too. And we said, well, how are you doing? He said, well, this is interesting. I'm about a 3 right now. And he said, no, nothing can do that. And by the way, this story is in the book, the Earthing book. It made the cut to be in the Earthing book. Anyway, so all of this finally convinced me, yeah, well, this is real. This is for real. So that's how I became much more interested. And eventually, Clint decided to start an institute to disseminate information about earthing and asked me if I would join and become the director of the Earthing Institute. That was in 2007. So I've been happily, working for earthing. I mean, before that, I was working, but I was basically working on research by research, you see. In any case, that's how the whole thing started. And by the way, I found out later that effectively, earthing was very popular at the end of the 19th century in Germany. There was a doctor called Adolf Just who found out that his patient was telling him, when I sleep on the ground, I feel so much better. So he started what today is the spa industry. It was not started as the spa industry. It started to be like a treatment. And it was imported to the US by another doctor who was aware of Dr. Just research. And with all the events, that was the medication work starting, at that time. So it was pushed into a niche which became basically the spa industry. But that was not the intention originally.
I discussed my epigenetics test with True Diagnostic co-founder Hannah Wendt in episode 162. Epigenetic testing measures baseline and changes in your pace of aging, giving you the power to steer your anti-aging or health and wellness journey in the right direction. I learned that I am aging well. Click on the affiliate link in the episode description, use the promo code AGEWELL, and receive a 12% discount on your epigenetics test and monitor your pace of aging. So, what exactly is grounding or earthing? And I guess, is earthing the more preferred terminology to use?
Both terms are correct. And the reason why Clint chose the term earthing is because grounding refer to connect electronic equipment to the ground, or like, for example, the electric grid, for example, where the power is. Well, in order to function properly, it has to be grounded to the earth. So both are designing the right thing. In fact, the word earthing is apparently more used in England, even in the electronic and electrical industry. But both words are correct. It's just that the grounding, when we use the term grounding in this context, it's grounding the human body, which means to put the human body in direct contact, the skin of the body, direct contact with the surface of the earth. And so this is done by walking barefoot outside, going on the beach, with wet sand, or swimming in the ocean. Anything that even touching a tree, not always though, because some bark are dry, but if you touch the leaves of the tree, you're grounded. So, and there's many things. You walk on cements, you're grounded, but not on asphalt. There's some videos that some doctor made showing what grounds you and what doesn't ground you. But basically, it's being in contact with the earth. But you can be in contact with the earth through conducting equipment, such as grounding mats that are made of conductive material. And there's a wire connecting, for example, to a rod planted outside, so that you are getting still the electrons from the earth. And so we can get into why it's working, and why earthing has health benefits. But I just want to finish answering your question right now. The other way is to use a grounding system of a building. Some people don't like that, and that's fine. They don't have to use it. I personally use it, but because I know how to check it, make sure it's safe, so that you have to check first that you have a good grounding system in your house, because sometimes it's not, there is some electricity on the ground wire, because it's the connection of the electrician sometimes connect the neutral wire with the ground wire, which is not supposed to happen, but it does happen. So there's many ways to do it, and but the main thing is we're not grounding about talking about spiritual grounding where you meditate and you feel like your root going. No, we're actually talking about physical contact with the earth.
Okay, and so in doing some research, and as I was kind of prepping for today, I pulled up probably in excess of about 20 articles. And reason why you're here is because your name was on many of those. And it found it very fascinating, very interesting. And because there's a fair amount of literature on it, it seems pretty reasonable that there's some good evidence out there. And so what are some of the findings? Can you share some of the findings for our listeners that these studies have kind of presented?
Yes. Well, the first finding is one using medical thermal imaging, which basically use an infrared camera to show inflammation. So when you have inflammation in the body, so you have, there's 4 cardinal signs of inflammation: redness, you have swollen, and you have pain, and all of these things. And so the infrared camera is able to catch that, because it's a region of higher temperature. So inflammation is the first thing that we detected and we did some research on. And it became, interestingly, it became a big subject of research in medical science only in around the year 2000. Before that, the loss of disease, the etiology was not clear. Where was it coming from? What was the cause? And then they found out, that most of the old age or degenerative diseases are actually inflammation based. Most cancers are. Diabetes, autoimmune disease, rheumatoid arthritis, all form of arthritis, Alzheimer's, all of these are inflammation based. And Time magazine had an article and was on the front page, inflammation, the new real enemy, of your health. And it took off. I mean, thousands and thousands of paper today about inflammation. So that was a big discovery. The first one is like it quenches inflammation, which is a big deal because most pains that people experience are inflammatory pain. Not all of them. There's two other types. One is healing pain. The other one is muscle tension pain. So, as you probably know, being in the athletic realm. But the thing is that that was a major discovery that really started to spur interest in digging deeper. The other research that to me was startling and was pretty interesting is Dr. Sinatra at the time, who is one of the author of the Earthing book. He was doing research on live blood analysis, and he invited friends, including Clint, to his lab, and they checked people's blood, and they found that all the people have clotted blood. That means that the red blood cells stick together and come from in rouleau formations. You know what it's like. And when this happened, then they cannot deliver the oxygen to the tissue. So people are asphyxiated through oxygen deprivation. The only person who was fine already was Clint Over. So they grounded all the people for about, I don't know, an hour or two. And all the blood clotting, came way much better. And he said to me, we need to do something about that. I mean, we need to do a publication. And while it is fine, to publish a paper on showing, that the red blood cells become healthier and all that stuff, I wanted to do something much more quantitative and found a way to measure something about the blood. And then my research, I found the research of a person who is a specialist in rheology. What is rheology? Rheology is the science of colloidal solutions. And colloidal solutions are solutions where you have small particles that are suspended in the solution. For example, milk is a colloidal solution. Blood is a colloidal solution. You have red blood cells and white blood cells in the blood. But a colloidal solution, to be able to be fluid, has to have certain electric potential. That's why, for example, you can take milk and add, for example, vinegar, which is acid, and you're going to have the white matter start clumping together. That's because you're changing the potential, electric potential of the milk. The blood is the same. So you need to have a certain good potential in the blood. And to measure that is not that difficult. It's a charge that builds up on the red blood cell. And to measure it, you can measure something called the zeta potential. And it's used by rheologists who are in charge of the quality of the water system. Basically, what they do is that they take water that has been soiled and they go through a certain number of process, which is reducing, the bad stuff in the water and then filtering and sending back again. So this rheologist realized that the blood is also a colloidal solution, and he had some heart condition. So he started, to ingest alkaline things to try to get his blood to be more negatively charged. And he got better. So that's where I got the idea of the zeta potential. So I built an equipment because zeta equipment to measure zeta potential are very expensive, $20,000 and more. So I made my own one for about $250. And it's been published. It's one of the publications where the first publication showing that earthing reduced blood viscosity, which is a big factor in cardiology. A lot of people, I have a friend who some years ago had a heart attack. And the same thing, not living grounded, your blood, you're more susceptible to heart attack or strokes. And so anyway, so I was very happy to see that it works. And it was replicated later by a sport physiologist, actually, also in Oregon. His name was Dick Brown from University. It's south from Portland.
The University of Oregon.
Yeah, University of Oregon. Yeah. So he replicated that, but he did send a blood sample to a rheology company that were measuring actually the blood viscosity directly. And again, really good results. So I was very happy, to be able to come up with this idea of measuring zeta potential was totally unknown by most doctors. But today, lots of cardiologists talk about zeta potential or blood viscosity and its importance. So I thought that was a landmark study that also propelled us into a deeper understanding of the effects of earthing on physiology.
So how can our listeners begin the practice of grounding?
Well, so now we are in the winter. For many regions, it's not practical to go outside barefoot. I know from experience because my own town is Montreal, and so I grew up there. Yeah, impossible during the winter. So the other option, if you cannot go outside, is to use products that will connect you to the ground through a wire. So you can use a rod that you plant outside. If you live in cold climates, it's best that it at least 3 to 4 feet deep, so that it goes below there's no real permafrost, but there's some part of the soil that froze in the winter. So you want to pass that goes down. If you are in California, like I am, it's not so important because, the soil never froze or anything, but it can be dry. And so sometimes you need to moist it, especially if you are like in Arizona or the Borrego deserts, like the deserts east of California. The other thing, as I mentioned, is to use the grounding hole of power outlets. In the 60s, there was no third hole. There was only 2 slots, just for the power. So the grounding hole is really not a necessity, but it's a protection. What they found is that many people got electrocuted using equipment, especially like toasters. Toasters in those days, they were made out of metal. If the live wire touched the outside metal, while the person at the same time is touching, the faucet in the kitchen, they could be electrocuted right there. So to prevent that, what they did, they added a ground, which is a true ground connected to the ground of the basement, foundation of the building. The newest model use rods that are 20 feet long. It's called the UFER model. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So that normally, if on new house, it's a really good ground. The only problem that could happen is sometimes the electricians will connect the ground wire, which is one of the live wires. See, when you have the 2 slits, one of the wire is the live wire where the power comes in your house. The other one is the neutral, where the electricity goes out from your home and goes back to the utilities. So this is essential for good function but sometimes electricians, I don't know, by negligence or something, they will connect together the ground wire and the neutral wire. What that does, then it creates some kind of a voltage on the ground wire. And normally, if it's less than 2 volts, it's not a problem, and it happens actually in North America that you could have a very small voltage of 1 volt, 2 volts on the ground wire, because for safety reasons, they connect them at the main entrance where, the electricity come in through a panel to the house. Then the electrical code in the US demand that there's 1 point of grounding between the neutral and the ground wire. So that makes sometimes there's a voltage of 1 volt or 2 volts on the ground wire, and that's not a problem for most people. There are some people who are electro hypersensitive. They cannot do that, so they have to use a rod planted outside. It's not that it's bad, that to be grounded this way. It's just that they feel the buzz. They're very, very sensitive. Their autonomic nervous system is out of balance. These are people who are super stressed. They have chemical sensitivities. They cannot tolerate, flickering light, neon lights, and things like that. So these people are super hyper stressed. And there's unfortunately a lot more and more people like that because of our lifestyle being disconnected, the food that we eat that is actually very acidic and create inflammation in the body, the stress of our lives, all of these things, create inflammation in our body, which is eventually our body is very tolerant. Will create virtual ground, trying to keep functioning, but at some point the body breaks down, and you have one of these diseases that happen around 50, 60, that arthritis, like I said, mentioned, arthritis, autoimmune disease, diabetes, all of these things that happens. It depends. What you get depends on your physiology, your biology, your genes, and all of that stuff. So it's getting complex, but something's going to give at some point if you're not grounded.
And so you're talking about putting a wire into the ground hole and, say, an outlet?
Yeah.
Right? And what is that connecting to then on the body? How are we connecting to that?
You can connect that to a grounding mat that you put your feet on. Like, for example, I'm at my computer now. So I have 2 grounding mats. One I use on my table as a mouse pad. It makes me my hands to be in contact with the ground. And I have another one for the feet. I also have a larger grounding mat for my bed so that I sleep grounded at night. And I have, sometimes I use like body bands or patches. If you like, for example, if I was, I would recommend, people who started to have the flu symptoms and stuff like that, you put 2 patches right here on the lung 1 point. It's very effective to help, the congestion to clear up. So we have lots of things. So the patches are really the most conducting, because more conducting than the mats and stuff like that. So if you have like an acute situation where a wound or something that you want to heal, then the best thing is to use patches. Like, for example, we have videos from Jeff Spencer, who is a chiropractor who was in charge of the well-being of the Tour de France team, US team, for many years. And when there was an injury, the first thing he was doing is put patches all around the injury, grounding the person, and also wrap the person into a sleeping mat, a grounding sleeping mat. And he had really good results. I remember a case where the arm was slashed because I think the guy went into the windshield of a car in front or the back window and cut his arm, and the doctor said he's out of the race. And Dr. Spencer said, "Give me 24 hours." So they did. Okay, we can drive whatever. So he put patches all around, his wound, and wrap him into sleeping bag, grounding sleeping bag. for 24 hours, and then they went to see the doctor, and they were amazed how much it was healed. So much that the doctor let him continue the race. In fact, we have videos about that, and also it's mentioned into the earthing book. So so you have different use. You have to understand that wherever you touch, the mat or you put the patch, that's where the electrons come into the body. So it's going to try to fix what's there first. If you put your feet, so the feet are specially adapted to be grounded. Did you know that we have more nerve termination per square inch on the sole of the feet than anywhere else in the body? Why is that? The second place where you have the most are the hands. These are the places where we most touch the earth or the tree or things like that. So anyway, the body is adapted to connect the electron and get the electrons from the earth.
That's fascinating. And a question I had, when you were talking about the kind of the imagery of the inflammation, and I was wondering, how much does the distance away from that grounding impact the kind of the benefits of it? I'm 6'5", and so if I'm grounded to the ground, how much benefit do I get to the upper extremities if that's the only grounding I make? Does that make sense?
Yes, I understand. So now we're getting into something we didn't talk too much about, is that the earth is a battery. Just like, a normal battery, it has a negative pole and a positive pole. The negative pole is the surface of the earth. That's where the electrons are. The positive pole is about 60 miles up or 100 kilometers up in the air in a zone of the atmosphere called the ionosphere. And it's called the ionosphere because it has ions. And what are ions? They are charged molecules. And these molecules are created by the sun rays, especially the UV rays that would be bad for us. They're actually absorbed by some molecules up in the atmosphere that break up and that create a positive and negative charge up there. And through a very complex system, including thunderstorm, the electrons are transferred to the surface of the earth. So I'll leave it at that. It's a complex system powered by the sun, actually. So then what happened is that, so because you have a negative and positive, between the two of them, you have an electric potential. So like the surface of the earth is considered zero electric potential. But normally, even in fair weather, the ionosphere up there is charged to 250 to 500,000 volts. And during thunderstorm, it's much worse, 5 million. Okay. So you have this large potential. So that means that when you're 6'5", so when you are touching the ground, so you are at the zero potential. The whole body has zero potential, but the potential increase about 150 volts per meter per 3 feet, basically. So that means that while your head is at 300 some volts, while the surface of the earth is at 0 volts, and you don't feel anything because the current is so small. You see, when you are what's the danger in anything that is electrical is not the voltage. You can survive thousands and thousands of volts. It depends on the current. 0.1 amps only will stop your heart beating and will kill you. Only 1/10 of an amp. So the current is important. And you know that people have tried to put a kite up there and get some electric power from just the difference of potential, and it does work. So it's possible. But what happens now is your head is at 300 volts. What's going to happen is this is going to create a current where the electron from the earth will go into your body and will move up because you're going to lose electrons from the upper part because they're going to be neutralized by the positive charge there. So you have a little current there, and it's not perfectly normal. We evolved this way. All animals are like that. Imagine a giraffe with the head 18 feet up there. So of course it has this normal current. It's fine actually because it gets the charge moving in the body, which is good. Because when you have inflammation in the body, it's the charge that are blocked there, and that create pain. In fact, we were even able to demonstrate in one of our research, if you put a wire around the pain, the region of pain, you can discharge the the energy, and the pain goes away. Not even grounding, but grounding is the preferred way because it repairs the tissues at the same time. So that's what happened. So and it's perfectly normal, and that's why we found it's interesting because I've seen many people, many research papers. They found that people living on high rise, especially on the upper floor, have poorer level than people living on the lower floors. And they didn't have any explanation. They were saying, well, maybe the air quality of the ventilation system, all of this. And I suggest that maybe, people living up there, imagine 150 volts per meter, and you're 100 meters up there, you know? So you are at 15,000 volts up there, you see? So I haven't explored that in detail, but it seems to me that one possible explanation is that these people up there needs to be grounded, you know? And the fact that they are so far off the ground, even if you're not grounded, when you're living really close to the ground, you still have some benefits of the electric field that is at the ground um, because those electrons that the earth is providing are not just electrons, they are energized electrons. They have some frequencies in them. They give information about the earth itself. That's why if you go, for example, let's say you're in Oregon and you fly to Japan, well, you can get your body synchronized with the regions by putting your feet on the ground. And the frequencies that are in there will help the body say, oh, we're now like, I don't know, 9 p.m. And it will adjust. It's basically preventing jet lag. And we have many, many anecdotal evidence of that. There's also something else. I don't know if it's something you are interested in. We should talk about it, but have you heard of the Schumann resonances?
No, I have not.
So Schumann resonances are created by lightning, and it's a frequency, a normal electromagnetic frequency in the air all over the planet at 7.83 hertz. Interestingly enough, it's, we have our brain waves that are like alpha, beta, theta. The beta is between 20 and 30 hertz. And then you have alpha around 10 to 20. And then you have theta, which is like 5 to 10, something like that. And it just happened that the Schumann resonance is right at the edge between the alpha and theta brain wave. So it's a very calming effect. It has an entrainment of the brain, entrain the brain at that frequency and calms you down. But now living in homes, what do we have here most of the time? The 60 hertz, everywhere or wherever. I mean, 60 hertz is twice the maximum frequency of the beta, which is when we are awake and really like 0-30, like it's like between 20 and 30 hertz. So we are overstimulated, like we need to react. And no wonder we are also, that's another source of stress, but we don't realize that. But when we're grounded, you're receiving the Schumann resonance through the grounding system also. So it's something for you to consider, the Schumann resonance versus, how we live. And so many things we do that could be fixed relatively easily to help our health, but people just don't know.
Yeah, so just simply getting outside and getting out of that 60 hertz, 50 hertz range, we're going to be more healthy, whether or not we're barefoot and walking in the ground or not.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to feel the difference. You're going to feel more calm, even if you're not grounded, even if you have your running shoes. Anyway, we've covered a lot, I think.
Yes, we have. Very much so. And in addition to your work as director of the Earthing Institute, you're also research director at SciTech. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes.
What is SciTech and how does that relate to the mission of the Earthing Institute and to aging well?
Yeah. So these are two separate jobs that I have. They're the only relation that they have is they're both in the health sciences. And so SciTech Lab is a laboratory for hire where startup company with new products to, help people be healthier come and um, want their product to be tested on real human beings to see if they work. Does a pendant work, for example? So I have this sticker on my cell phone. We tested it. Does it work? And to protect, it does not eliminate EMF. We can measure EMF through it, but somehow it does something that the EMF seems to be changed from having a harmful effect to positive effect. And it's through something called sacred geometry. I don't pretend to understand it myself. It's beyond normal physics. But it works. So I'm, practical. I'm an engineer. So something works. I don't care how it works. It works. Later we'll figure out. But so we've done some testing like that. Most of the thing, by the way, that are stickers, like they don't work. 90 out of 100 don't work actually. Or pendants or but of course, you can use like shielding clothing, which is made of, metal, and that works like a Faraday cage. Because in reality, to stop like radio frequencies, like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, all of these things, all you need is a metal piece, the thickness of aluminum sheet. That's it. It's not going through, but the 60 does. So nothing is perfect. The advantage of those metal clothing is that they protect against high frequency, but not low frequency. The advantage of earthing is protect against low frequency, but not high frequency.
Okay.
So you see, it's a compromise. Nothing's perfect, but we have means, if you really need it, there's ways to protect your home. There's like metallic paint that you can paint a room so that it become a huge Faraday cage by itself. I mean, there's some expenses to all of these things, but I mean, if your health is on the line and you really need it, then go away. I mean, there's the equipment is out there. It's possible to protect ourselves. And most people who are healthy, you see, it's not the first trigger. So some people are afraid, by EMF. If you are healthy, you will need more than just EMF to trigger your health, with challenges and having problems. You would need to add to this bad food, stress. Eventually, all of these things will get you down. But I don't think that just exposure to EMF per se, uh, if you are healthy, have a good food, and you are, living a good lifestyle, that will take you down per se. It's not unless you're the only example where it happened is Dr. Sinatra's son, Step Sinatra, who was working at the stock exchange in New York, where in a room with 100 computers. So if you have any health problem a little bit and you are exposed to so much EMF, then yes, you might have some problem. And that's what's happened to him. Plus, he was working in a very stressful job and odd hours. So all of that together took him down. So he had to stop. And he's healthy now and things are going well. But we had to ground him. And, he ended up in the hospital before,
Wow.
Being able to. But, most of the time for a healthy person like you, for example, probably just EMF will probably not take you down. Need a lot more than that. But
Yeah,
everybody's different.
we often talk on the podcast here, and I bring it to my students quite frequently, this idea that really our health is biomechanical psychosocial. That there's this complexity of things that are happening that give us poor health or improve our health. And it's not always just one answer to the problem. It's numerous different solutions.
Yeah. Numerous cause needs numerous solutions.
Yeah. This has been fascinating. I've learned a lot about earthing. I'm going to have to look into it a little bit more and I just injured my shoulder this week. I've got ongoing rotator cuff issues and
put a patch there.
That's what I'm thinking of looking into, getting a patch and see how that kind of works for it.
Okay.
I was going to ask you kind of after we've concluded the interview, but I'm going to ask it now. I see a lot of like compression sleeves and things like that are copper infused, and people that wear, copper bracelets. Does that have any physiological benefits that you have kind of come across in your research or explorations?
Not in our research and exploration. I just know that we need copper for proper functioning of the immune system. Copper and zinc, are very important. But other than that, it's just like, because I'm also researching, because I'm also director of research at SciTech Lab, I'm researching a lot of other things, even above or separated from earthing. And we're doing a research project on the effect of a patch made by a company called Lifeway, which is not grounded patch. These are phototherapy patches. It's another story altogether. And so the sponsor wanted to see that it improved the immune system. And one of the things that he was suggesting is that we give copper supplement to the person, because copper is needed for one of the pathways of the immune system to function properly. If you want more detail on that, you can probably research that, or I might have some information on that somewhere.
Yeah, because my understanding with the copper on the surface of the skin is to act as kind of almost like a magnet that draws the circulation and helps kind of improve the circulation. And it never made a lot of sense to me, but perhaps in connection with the general electrical currents that come through grounding and things like that maybe that has a bit of an effect.
But it's not magnetic. It's not magnetic. It cannot be magnetic. It's some kind of electrical interaction or chemical interaction.
Yeah.
And people say also that you can have too much copper, can have an intoxication of copper. I don't know how easy that is. Apparently that happened, but I don't know.
Yeah, you'd have to probably ingest quite a bit of it to get to that toxicity level.
Probably.
All right. Well, a question I ask of all our guests, and I know part of what you're doing is obviously grounding, but what are you doing personally to age well?
What do I do personally?
Yep.
Well, as I mentioned a little bit, I sleep grounded every night. I'm always grounded at the computer. I found that it makes a big difference. Even if I ground at night, I come to the computer, I spend a few hours there. I found that it drains my energy, and that when I'm grounded, I can work more and less tired. So I'm trying to ground as much as possible during the day. I'm also be careful to my diet. So I'm trying to have a good, healthy diet. Have enough sleep, that's not a problem. Sleeping grounded, really helpful. And I'll also presently, I'm on a special detox, because I found out through air analysis that 6 months ago that I have 300 times the level of uranium in my body.
Wow.
I'm a radioactive material. I didn't know that until then. And finally, I connected the dot. Oh my God, when I was doing my PhD in mid-80s, I was working in a lab. So I was not working on uranium. I was working on the laser separation of zirconium for other reasons, also related to the nuclear reactor industry. But the lab itself, the person who worked with before me, was doing laser separation of uranium. So now I'm realizing the lab was contaminated with uranium. And I spent at least 2-3 years in that lab. So thank God I met Wendy Mayers. Virtually. Somehow she popped up in my email, and I started studying what she's doing. And I decided to try. And after 6 months, I've done a lots of fasting. I studied macrobiotic diets, all of these things, all the other, uh, minerals and everything were okay. I was not, arsenic was okay. Everything was okay. Just uranium. And all I did could not get rid of uranium because it lodges in the bones. So you really have to have a very special detox to be able to clear up. And I'm happy to report that the last news, it came down to 10 times the normal level instead of 300. So, and I'm feeling more energy. I definitely feel the difference.
That's
So
great.
that's part of my personal story. I was startled. I mean, think about that. I must have had uranium in my body since 1986, 85, 86. That's 15 plus 23, like 38 years. Wow. It's about time I do something about it.
Yeah. You're probably fortunate you didn't have any significant health issues from that.
Probably. Yeah, probably. I did have fatigue. Was getting tired and I was wondering why.
Mm-hmm.
But I got much more energy now, which is very good.
Now, you mentioned sleep. Does the grounding mat help with the quality of sleep? I mean, do
I
you
would
feel
say
like you sleep
yes.
better?
I would say yes. Most people report more vivid dream because people, they have smoldering inflammation. So they have little pains here and there. And you go to sleep and you don't sleep very well. You toss around here and there. And you don't even realize because these little levels of pains are all present, but they prevent you from having a good night's sleep. You take that away and your sleep is way better. And a lot of people don't realize that they're living in a low key, low level, permanent pain situation, because it's like my friend, he has his thumb 8. He said, I live like that. I have to cope with this. People try to cope the best they can. So you take that away, and suddenly, wow, my sleep is vivid dreams and everything, and makes a big difference. Apparently, there's a sleeplessness epidemic in America. So
Yes.
hopefully, we can make a dent on it using everything.
Well, we tend to promote, having a regular bedtime, regular rising time. Now we'll have to start talking about getting some good quality grounding while you sleep.
And also, it helps cortisol level, which is control the circadian rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
So that also help in that way that with the hormonal balance that we're supposed to have during the day and everything. So it helps with our energy too.
Right. Was there anything else you would like to share with our listeners? And how can our listeners find out more about grounding and the Earthing Institute?
Well, we have a website, earthinginstitute.net, where it's a repository of all the research, but we also have the frequently asked questions, all the questions we had over the 20 years. And now we're just finished actually filming a series of about 50 videos that will be put into 3 certification levels. So we're putting together an earthing certification course, which will have 3 levels: level 1 basic, level 2 intermediary, level 3 advanced, where people can, for $49 only, will get a certificate of completion showing that they've gone through. There will be a little examination at the end of each level so that they pass the level and then they can be certified. And we're doing this because it's been asked for a long time that health practitioners, they like to have, a certificate in nutrition, certificate in functional medicine, this and that, and it gives them some credibility. And I think that uh, having them go through the certification process will help them, understand and be able to talk about earthing much more efficiently. And we're planning also a level 4 at some point, probably in in spring of 2024, for people who graduated from all 3 levels, so that we can exchange information what best methods, to help heal people and things like that. So, we're excited about that. It's already been filmed. It's all now in post-production. We're hoping to have level 1 available mid-January, level 2 mid-February, and level 3 mid-March. And so something to be followed. And you can also become register to become on our mailing list about earthinginstitute.net, and we'll keep you posted on our progress. And I put out a newsletter once a month, every month, so that keep abreast what's the new information in the earthing world, what's happening.
Okay. We'll add a link to the episode notes, and so that the listeners can just click on that. But you also mentioned a book. How can they find that book? Is that available on Amazon?
Yeah, Amazon. You can find it at Amazon. We have also a Facebook group called Earthing Insiders, where you can have all kind of questions that you think are not permitted normally. But it's for people to share. We have like 7,500 members now. So if somebody has a condition and said, "Oh, what about having this reaction?" Somebody who said, "Oh yeah, I've had that, and here's how I resolve my situation." It's very helpful. Very helpful.
We'll add that link as well.
Yeah, it's Earthing. Yeah, it's Earthing Insiders.
Great. Well, I really appreciate your time today. Again, this was a very informative episode, and I'll have to do a little bit more exploration into it and probably report back on some of my personal findings and how it works for me.
Perfect. Okay, excellent. Thank you so much again for having me.
You're welcome.
I'm available all the time, at the earthinginstitute.net to answer any questions that you or anybody else may have.
Sounds good. We'll tell our listeners to keep grounded and to keep aging well.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. I hope you benefited from today's podcast. And until next time, keep aging well.